Good evening, 10:31 p.m. on Sunday, the 13th of November. And I see I have two people watching. Oh my goodness. If you want to comment, chat's open. I have two people watching. Oh my goodness. If you want to comment. I got some background noise and going on. Sorry about that. Just fixed it. Unless you're living under a rock, you already know the news. Both spokespersons for Ontario Public Health, the government, and Premier Doug Ford have signaled that at some point tomorrow there's going to be an announcement about recommending everyone mask up. And the way I expect it to go down is this. Dr. Kieran Moore will hold a press conference at some point tomorrow morning. He will recommend in the strongest possible terms that everyone in Ontario wear masks, if at all possible, when in indoor public places. And now I have my dog going nuts. Sorry about that. Quiet, Candy. That everyone mask up in indoor public places whenever possible, if at all possible. Put a mask on. And I think we will see an increase in mask wearing. I don't expect it will be substantial, but I think it will be noticeable. You will see, my guess is we will see more people wearing masks. I will not be one of them. We're returning to the insanity. And in terms of an actual mandate, it's going to be stressed tomorrow that no one's going to be fined or like happened before for not wearing a mask. But if at all possible, please wear one. They're really going to push this. And the reason I will suggest is primarily psychological. It softens the population up. It dehumanizes people when you can only see half of someone's face. I've got one here, and you only can see that much of a person's face. It takes away so much of our humanity, and makes us easier to control. And what I'm going to suggest is be as upbeat, be as upbeat, outgoing, smiling, and happy and unmasked as you can be. Because kill them with love. It's all you can do. And at the same time, kindly remind people about the absolute stupidity, contradictions that are going on, and we all know it. People will be going into restaurants because with a mask on and then taking it off when they sit down, because everyone knows that respiratory aerosols and droplets are only an issue in restaurants when you're standing. When you're sitting, all of a sudden you stop breathing out viral aerosols and droplets. It's only during standing in restaurants. If you're on an airplane, well, then it's sitting too. This is the absolute insanity of our times. And I think we're in a better place now because less people are afraid of SARS-CoV-2 than they were in 2020 and 2021. A lot of people have tuned out on the panic porn, propaganda filled media. We've seen what CBC has engaged in, putting a mannequin on screen in an ICU, and then only acknowledging their heinous disregard for journalistic ethics after the fact when they got caught. If you missed that little tidbit, I forget, it was sometime last year, and CBC News out of Edmonton showed an image of an individual, what purported to be an individual sitting, lying in ICU on a ventilator. And the purpose behind the image is clear. It's to drive fear, showing you someone in an ICU on a ventilator. But as it turned out, eagle-eyed consumers of the news noticed that it wasn't, in fact, a human being, that it was a mannequin, and they called CBC out on it. And the director for CBC News Edmonton issued a public apology stating that it was a mistake, an error in judgment. We hear this all the time. And it wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an error in judgment. It was done on purpose. You're telling me that the director of the news programming for CBC in Edmonton never took first-year journalistic ethics? You know, it'd be one thing if you want to show that image, fair enough, you disclose it. You say the following image that we're showing depicts a mannequin in an ICU to give a visual impression of what a patient hooked up to a ventilator would look like. However, they didn't do that. That would be ethical, to disclose that it's a mannequin. But unethically, they didn't do it. And then they tried to apologize for it after the fact and claimed it was a mistake or an error in judgment, and that's garbage. No error, no mistake. They did it on purpose. And this mask mandate, they know it's stupid. They know it's useless. But it's useless in terms of mitigating viral spread. But it's very useful in terms of conditioning the population to basically roll over and accept things. And it's up to us as individuals. And I know that it's difficult. I imagine this will embolden some of the mask lovers. They will feel they're justified now. They will feel vindicated to a degree. They may be a little more bold and a little more confrontational in asking you to wear a mask. And what I'm going to suggest is being calm, friendly, smiling, and as nicely as possible, point out the contradictions. Ask, so you want me to wear one when I go into Tim Hortons when I'm standing, have a mask on, but not when I'm sitting? That doesn't make any sense to me. You know, just say that's illogical. If there are viral aerosols and droplets spreading around, well, they're spreading around when I'm standing or sitting. So what's the difference? I'm not going to wear one when sitting. I'm not going to wear one standing either. That's dumb. And we can talk about all manner of things with masks. The fact that the people who wear cloth masks, those masks have holes in them that are typically 5 microns or larger in size, and SARS-CoV-2 aerosols are less than a micron in size. So it's the proverbial shopping cart being used to carry sand, or using a piece of backdoor screen as an umbrella. It's not going to work. But then it's not intended to work, no matter how. And things are going to get bad this winter. Our hospitals are going to be overwhelmed. They got overwhelmed back in 2019, 18, 17, before COVID came along, because our hospital system is underfunded and we have an aging, unhealthy population in Canada. We have the baby boomers are in their 60s and 70s now. The front end of the baby boom is crowding up to 80 years of age now. And that's when people get old, that's when we tend to get sick. That's when we tend to access the healthcare system. We've known this for decades, that major investment and expansion in health networks was required and nothing was done. So everything that's happening was anticipated. COVID or no COVID, our hospital system was going to be overwhelmed. But however bad things get, and they're going to get bad, they'll say, well, it would have been even worse without masks. Masks make things better. That's accepted now by a good chunk of the population, blindly, without even thinking about it. And do I think that return to mandatory masking? I'm not going to make a prediction, but if I was handicapping it, I'd say 75%. I'd put the odds at 75% that within the next week or two, that Dr. Kieran Moore, Doug Ford will go back to mandating masks. I can absolutely see it. And basically, what they're doing is softening the ground with this, urging them in the strongest possible terms. They'll get as many as people as they can voluntarily, and then when that doesn't work, then they'll bring in the heavy hand of mandates. I mean, we saw that with the vaccines. They urged, begged, bribed, did everything, and then ultimately, then they went to mandates. Rinse and repeat. They're going to. I do. I'm not. It sounds. I'm saying I'm not making a prediction, but it sounds like I am. I will not be surprised. I will not fall off my chair if within a week or two they mandate masks again and require them, and then we're back to the insanity. I hope it doesn't happen. I hope some sanity prevails, but it depends not on the government, not on health officials. It depends on the population. If most Canadians, most people in Ontario will grow a spine, because I think there are too many people who know that masks, there's enough people out there that are smart enough to realize the stupidity of wearing a mask while standing but not sitting, and all the other stupidity, and who realize that these things with the big gaps at the sides and everything, and that they're not going to stop a viral aerosol from either as a control measure or as protection. They're, again, it's a shopping cart to carry sand in. I think most Canadians, most Ontarians, I think, know this. They know it's stupid. They know it's got nothing to do with science. But ultimately, I also think a lot of people who are eyes open to the fact that masks are counterproductive at best, or counterproductive at worst, and harmful potentially. Ultimately, a lot of people will put one on regardless, simply because it's part of our compliant Canadian nature. Well, I don't want to rock the boat. Well, everyone wants me to have one on, so I'll put one on. I have the hot mess mom saying, I hear, well, I'm 4 or 5 shots in. What harm is it to wear a mask? Yeah, and that, I if someone wants to wear a mask, who am I to tell them they can't? I mean, that would be the flip side of mandating them to tell someone they can't. Go ahead, wear a watermelon peel rind on your head if you think it'll help. Sure, your choice, but don't tell me I have to wear one. And I'm afraid we're on that slippery slope once again that we were on before, and that they will force it. And I'm going into work. I've mentioned before that I work in a retail environment. I will be working tomorrow. I will be unmasked. I'm a little trepidatious about going to work tomorrow. Ground's moving a bit. And, are people going to be confrontational? I know the individuals I work with who love the mask. There are very few of them. They are in a distinct minority, but they are going to feel emboldened. They're going to feel justified. They're going to feel vindicated somewhat tomorrow. And if one or more of them get a little loud, I'm ready. I'm ready to have those conversations. I'm going to do it as calmly and as politely and as in as friendly a manner as I possibly can, explaining, and I've had this conversation so many times already, talking about how in May of 1990, how masks were mandated. Some people were wearing them, some weren't. And I was, at that point, I genuinely was very up in the air. I had never looked into masking before, and I held it as an open question. There seemed to be a certain degree of logic to sticking something in front of your face, that it might provide some benefit. And that's when I started doing as much reading on the subject as I could, and I came across an article in the CBC News, topic of my video yesterday. And in that article, quoting an infection control epidemiologist from the University of Toronto, Dr. Colin Furness, he cited research that had been done by an Australian team on healthcare workers wearing cloth masks, medical paper, procedural masks, whatever you want to call these, and N95s. And they found that cloth mask increased an individual's risk of a respiratory infection by 1,300%, 1,300% increased risk of developing a respiratory infection. That was for cloth. For this type of mask, 200%, double the risk of a respiratory infection. And he cited the research being in a British medical journal. I looked it up. It is in the British Medical Journal, the BMJ. Read that study. It was healthcare workers, a 4-week study period, and the healthcare workers wore a mask, cloth, or the medical mask. They wore them 4 hours a day over a 4-week study period, and they exponentially increased their risk of developing a respiratory infection. And in the article, he said that if you think about it, it makes logical sense. That a mask, you're breathing on it all day long, creating all this wonderful space for bacteria to multiply. And at a certain point, you're going to start inhaling them. And then he went on to say that getting infected with a drug-resistant bacteria could be worse than COVID-19 for some people. Duh. Brain dead simple. And then I went on to read research done by the CDC before COVID. 14 randomized control trials were looked at, and only one of the 14 showed a very modest benefit to masking. 13 found no benefit whatsoever. And so, well, if you have 13 randomized control trials saying one thing and just one outlier, I'll go with the 13, because the scientific process involves replication. If you conduct a study that shows a given result, replication will solidify those results. If you only have one result showing a particular outcome, but it never repeats, well, there could have been a flaw in the methodology of the trial. There could have been bias on the part of the researchers conducting the trial. There could have been all manner of problems. This is what comes out in the peer review process when scientific trials and such are published to publications like The Lancet, the BMJ, Annals of Internal Medicine. And then again, I referenced again yesterday, the Annals of Internal Medicine published a study conducted by McMaster University. McMaster looked at over 100 years worth of research studies, trials on public masking, and found there was no direct evidence showing that masks provided any protection for either the people wearing them or others. No evidence of it, no evidence that they work whatsoever. So if you're going to have, if public policy is going to be evidence-based, well, then masking mandates make no sense. But we don't live in that era. The era we're living in now, there is science behind this. It is political science. It's not medical science. And having everyone in masks helps drive the narrative that there's an emergency going on. And when there's an emergency going on, and when people are living in fear, then that opens up the possibility for the government to introduce all manner of mandates, draconian measures, whatever. And the last thing they want to do is have people let go of their fear. The virus is fear. Fear robs people of their capacity to think critically. That's why people think wearing a mask standing up helps, but you don't need one when sitting down. Anyone doing that has let their critical thinking skills, they've flushed them down the toilet. They've might as well just remove the frontal lobes of the brain where our higher thought processes take place and just throw it in the garbage, because, and this is the world we're living in. And it's sad and it's depressing, but you got to muscle on. You got to keep going forward. So, it's amazing how quickly science can change. Now I'm having TAA. I'm going to guess, by and large, anyone 40 or older with a brain is able to think logically and ask normal questions. Why don't get distracted by feelings, but rather real, we don't get distracted by feelings, but rather real data. We live in a world now, I'm 56, and the way people are being conditioned now is that emotion, feelings trump facts. Now let's look at the whole transgenderism, which has nothing to do with COVID, but to a degree, I would say it does, because this whole idea that a guy with, I'm just going to use the terms clinically, don't mean to offend anyone, but if you have a penis and if you have testicles and if you have an X and a Y chromosome, well, you're a guy, you're a man. Now, there was a Supreme Court justice being grilled by the Senate committee, and she was being asked if she could define, if she knew what the difference it was between a man and a woman. And obviously she does, but in the political climate that's been foisted upon us in this world, that would be a dangerous question for her to answer, because a large segment of the population believes that gender is just a societal construct now, and that it has no basis in physical objective reality. It's all based on your feelings. And so feelings trump facts in today's world. Your feelings are what matter, and your feelings can change, and that's okay. I hate this. The world that we're living in is this, this great reset that we're living under. I've equated it to a baseball game, and I've said that we are in the, hard to say exactly, but I would say that we're in the top of the second, or maybe between the second and third innings. There's a long way to go before this agenda plays out. And we're in the very, very early stages of it. The ground was being softened. I'm using that expression a lot tonight, but the ground was being softened long before COVID came along. We had this whole transgenderism thing. So we've had critical race theory foisted upon us. We've had all manner of science that has no basis in science thrown at us, and basically has deconstructed our entire world. And so now you don't know up from down, right from wrong, black from white. It changes day to day. It's Orwellian. If you haven't read 1984, I strongly recommend everyone read that book. Lies are truth, truth are lies. Good is bad, bad is good. War is peace, and peace is war. Everything is upside down. And if you assert, if you're like me, an old dinosaur who is used to empirical, evidence-based reality, objective truth, well, I'm a dinosaur. I get it. I completely get it. I'm not willing to rearrange the entire world the way that the younger generations have been taught to. They've been taught that rearranging the world based on subjective emotions and feelings, that is the way that you deal with reality. The way to deal with reality is to divorce yourself from reality. It's insane, the world that we're living in. And all this masking is just the latest manifestation of it. Well, I feel safer wearing it. So I feel, well, do you have any proof it works? I don't need proof. I feel it does, so that's truth. I have the hot mess mom writing, the creatures outside looked from pig to man, and from man to pig, and from pig to man again. But already it was impossible to say which was which. And she's referencing George Orwell's probably his second most famous book, Animal Farm, where all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. The Great Reset and the Fourth Industrial Revolution, one of the buzzwords being put forward by the World Economic Forum and its acolytes is to say that we need, pardon me, that we need to move toward a system of stakeholder capitalism. That's the buzzword, stakeholder capitalism. And what I will suggest is that in this new Great Reset agenda, the stakes will be you and I. The holders will be the Klaus Schwabs and the uber, the hyper wealthy, those with the wealth, power, and connections will be the holders. You and I will be the stakes. The ultimate goal of this agenda is to have the vast majority of whatever is left of humanity when this is all said and done, is to have us as little more than digital property. And the owners will be corporate. That's the goal. It's going to fail because it's a beastly system and it's a multi-headed beast. And you have the corporate elite, and they think they will have their hands on the steering wheel. They think they'll be the ones driving the bus. But there are also the Chinese. They think that they're going to seize control of the steering wheel and drive the bus. I think it's very possible that the Russians, Vladimir Putin, think that they'll be able to gain control of the steering wheel and steer the bus. And so what I see happening right now is the world as we know it, certainly post-World War II, has been, and I'm not the first to use this term, Pax Americana. We've been living in Pax Americana, especially if you're in the Western world, but even if you're not. The United States and its corporate elite have been the ones driving the bus. And now they're tearing down the old system. And when old systems tear down, they're trying to manipulate things in such a way. They do not want a situation like happened during the French Revolution before Napoleon came into power, where Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, and we all know what happened, Madame Guillotine was brought out. And the aristocracy in the old French monarchy were hunted down. It was the basis of Charles Dickens' famous book, A Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. They've learned the lessons of history, and they want an orderly breakdown of our society. That's why it's taken so long. Slow, orderly breakdown of society, and then tearing away the very foundations of Western civilization. And then the idea, check out the videos by Yuval Noah Harari with the World Economic Forum. The idea is to bring in about a surveillance state where humanity is monitored under the skin. That's his term. And we've all heard about the Chinese social credit system, where we live in a world right now, and have for a long time, where the system has been monetary. That's the arbitrary determining factor about the degree to which you're able to participate in society. It's based on how much capital you can get. The more money you have, the more choices you have, the more things you can do. Now, instead of money, under this Chinese social credit system, it becomes behavior. If you're a good little citizen who does what the government wants you to do, directs you to do, then your social credit score goes up. And based on your social credit score, that determines how active you can be in the marketplace, whether you can travel, the choices available to you. If you don't have a high enough social credit score and you're a young kid and you want to go out to a rave, well, you will be denied entry, whereas someone with a higher social credit score will be allowed in. And it's the way I look at this Great Reset as envisioned by the World Economic Forum. They're envisioning it as a system that the ultimate control behind the curtain, the power behind the throne, if you will, is corporate elites. And the governments would be there in place. Government would basically be the puppet masters of these corporate elites. And they would be one step removed. And so people get mad at the government, but not at the actual puppet masters pulling the strings on both sides of the aisle. I have the Hot Mess Mom writing, there is a Black Mirror episode on Netflix that breaks it down perfectly. I don't have Netflix. Don't have Netflix, Disney Prime, any of that stuff. I don't have television. And I think a large part of the reason why during this insanity I've been able to be objective about things is one of the reasons is because I don't have television, because I'm not programmed, because that's what it's called on television. They call it television programming. Yeah, it's not just the programs you're watching, it's programming. It's programming you what to think, what to prioritize, how to feel about things. And I've snipped the cord as much as possible. I still have the internet, obviously, or else I wouldn't be doing this live. And even that, I look upon this, I'm putting this out there. This video that I'm doing right now, a year ago, probably would have been banned. I had a video taken down, and all I did in that video, realizing that merely that talking about anything about the jabs, that it would get my video taken down. So all I simply did was to say names. Michael Yeadon, former vice president at Pfizer and one of that company's chief science officers. Dr. Francis Christian, teaching physician with the University of Saskatchewan and editor of a medical journal. Dr. Robert Malone, cited by Google Scholar as an inventor of mRNA and DNA vaccines. Dr. Peter McCulloch, most published cardiologist in US history, and maybe the most published cardiologist in world history. Dr. Luc Montagnier, winner of the Nobel Prize for isolating HIV, the virus which causes AIDS. I listed 7 or 8 doctors, Dr. Byron Bridle with the University of Guelph, given $300,000 by the Ontario Ministry of Public Health to offer his expertise as one of Canada's leading experts on vaccines. In 2021, was funded by Ontario Public Health to offer his expert opinion on the vaccines that were under development at that time. And I just mentioned their names, and that video was taken down. I didn't say anything about their opinions one way or the other. I just mentioned their names and their credentials, and that video was down Orwell's memory hole. Now, it seems the censorship has eased back, and I will suggest that the reason that's happened is that we've crossed the Rubicon. We've gone. There's no going back now. The truth can come out now to a degree, to a much greater degree than it could before, because the goal has been achieved. They've gotten 80 to 90% of Canadians to roll up their sleeves. I don't know what the numbers are in the United States. I think they're somewhere closer to 70%, or whatever it is. Canada, it's 80% of the entire population, age 0 and up, and 90% of us who are age 12 and up. Not me. TAA is saying I can't even stomach TV anymore. I used to work at a radar station, 24-hour a day, 7 day a week, 365. We never closed. We couldn't find the key. Operation Military, and we had TV. We had I think it was Bell Satellite, and during what I will call normal working hours, Monday to Friday until 4 or so in the afternoon, if anything was on the TV, it had to be either news or current affairs type programming. We weren't allowed to have soap operas or whatever, or sports. Although I do know if there was a big hockey game, if Canada was playing in like the Olympics or something, we would have that up. But typically it was news programming. And I don't know how many times I walked by the TV and went, oh, that's total crap. My colleagues would look at me, fellow service guys would look at me like, what? And I would, it's garbage, especially during this COVID era, the deadly coronavirus. I'm like, give me a break. They researched when it was hitting Italy really hard, and they found out that like 99% of the people who were getting seriously sick and dying from it were already at the end of natural life expectancy, and typically had 2, 3, and often more serious underlying health conditions, often terminal. So the deadly coronavirus is deadly if you're already in the active process of dying anyway. If you're not, you have nothing to worry about. But no one's going to listen to me because I'm not the Wizard of Oz up with the big screen and the flashing lights and all the production values. So anyway, guys Hot Mess Mom, TAA, thank you very much for joining in. I enjoy the back and forth. I enjoy the commentary. And I'm going to end it here. If you like the video, I see I already have 2 likes. I'm guessing that's you too, probably. Thank you. So if you want to give it a like, give it a like. If you want to subscribe, be my guest, and you'll find out when I do the next one. Goodness knows the science could change tomorrow. You might find that someone's feelings about something have changed, which means if feelings change, then the science changes. And that's the world we're living in. Anyway, God bless everyone, and we'll talk to you later. Night.